Welcome to Sidetracked, your unofficial agency of record. I'm Shane.
And I'm Emily, and we help run Trek, a tech-driven, full-service creative agency based in Rockford, Illinois.
Here on the podcast, we tackle our clients' biggest marketing challenges. We reveal what's worked for us and dig into real-life case studies and practical strategies you can put to work today.
Curiosity is our compass, which is why we always start with a question. All right, today's big question is, how can I make it easier to achieve brand consistency? And here to help us answer this question is our senior graphic designer, Alyssa Watkins.
Hi, Alyssa.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So we're going to start with a fun question. And I want to hear about a brand experience you've had that stood out in your memory. Could be recently, could have been a while ago, but just something that stuck with you. Alyssa, you go first.
So I think one that stands out in my mind is one that I've been following for a few years now, but I just saw them pop up in my feed again recently, so they're prominent in my brain. But it would be Wendy's, the fast food restaurant. Several years ago, they modified their social media persona to, I think, make themselves more relevant with current population and generations. So especially with what is now X, Twitter, they began to start roasting people in their tweets. And not just people, but other companies, namely their competitors. And at the time, it was pretty, I guess, controversial. You know, people thought that it was pretty hilarious and it went viral frequently.
It was pretty funny.
So you've seen
they're
this too,
witty.
Emily. You've been watching this as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the first example I saw, but there was something about Taco Bell, like Taco Bell had tweeted, and then they replied to a tweet. They're not just saying it off the bat. They're trolling people, or they were anyways.
I see.
And they are incredibly active, engaged. So it's usually multiple times a day. They are quick on their feet. They do not take long to respond. And then within the last few years, more recently, they modified their Facebook persona to be kind of an entirely different personality. And for a while, a lot of people thought that their Facebook had actually been hacked because their posts were just completely chaotic. One term that I frequently have seen used to describe it is unhinged. Lowercase, all caps, shouty messaging with no punctuation. You're not even entirely sure what it says. And everyone just didn't understand what was going on, and it was really abrupt and jarring when it first started taking place. But they've stuck it out and kept it so consistent that now people recognize it for who they are on social media.
That's an
it's always
approach.
So wild.
It's a strategy, to be sure.
Wait, so, okay, my big question is, since they started doing this, have you eaten more Wendy's, less Wendy's, or the same amount of Wendy's?
We go to Wendy's pretty frequently. Not so much in the last couple of months, but my kids are big fans of the Frosties. So we do frequent there. I would not say it's related to the social media strategy. However, there have been several instances, especially when it first started, that it would come up naturally in conversation. Or someone would be like, oh my gosh, have you seen what Wendy's posted yesterday on Twitter or on Facebook? And it was something to talk about. It was just so unhinged.
I feel like fast food is one of those impulse buys. And so you just have to be top of mind. And they just took the approach of be top of mind no matter what, for whatever reason. And I feel like this also started, Alyssa, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm putting my marketing hat on, this happened in a landscape of time when Taco Bell was starting to be really provocative in different ways. There was a Taco Bell hotel, and they just started doing all kinds of off the wall marketing. And so I feel like the people at Wendy's were just how do we keep up? We don't have a budget. Let's just do random stuff on social media because
Yeah,
there's
that could be.
There was like no other marketing around it. It was just like one day they were unhinged. I don't know.
Okay, after this, I'm going to see if there are any interviews out there with Wendy's social media manager because I want to
So
understand
curious.
how this person thinks.
Yeah.
The best
What's
part is
your
I don't think it's one person.
Well,
It's a whole
it
team of
sounds like
people.
it would
They
be
have
like
to,
a
yeah.
full-time job for a few people if they're posting that
Mhm.
frequently. Like we know how much work social media is. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Wow. Impressive.
Shane, what's your brand experience? What stands out in your mind?
Okay. When I think about brands and brand consistency, I think about Horn and Hardart Coffee Company. So, full disclosure, my husband's family has a stake in this company, but because of that, I've been able to see over many years like what they've done with the brand, and I have kind of like a behind the scenes view on it. And basically it's this like really old coffee company. It's a Horn and Hardart they did the automats like in Philadelphia and Manhattan back in the day, like very classic mid-century brand. And so the automat, you would go and you would like put your money in the wall and like a piece of pie would come out. And apparently the automats had really good coffee that people loved. They revived the brand a little over a decade ago. And the question at that time was, are we going to go really like classic and mid-century with the brand look and feel and marketing? Or are we going to try to modernize it? They tried a few things, but more recently, the company's landed on this like really beautiful mid-century vibe. And the packaging is really like just classic design. Like I'm a big mid-century fan, so I love looking at the packaging. It comes in this beautiful box that the cardboard box itself has been printed with this really cool like it's actually more of like an Art Deco vibe on the box, and then
Who?
each box comes with like a little printed card that has an original H&H recipe on it from back in the day. So
Mhm.
it's like, here's how we make our chicken pot pie. And they like really went like just like fully into the history of the brand. And since then, the company's been like doing really well and growing, I think by embracing that history. So I think of that as a really good example of like consistent brand that had like a really clear touch point. Like any new thing they make, they can kind of go back to the history of the brand and they can, kind of call themselves back to, well, what would it have looked like then? While making it still feel, updated for current times. And also the coffee is really good. So that's my
I need to try this
example.
coffee still.
Yeah.
I
Big
was just
coffee
gonna say
fan.
that.
That's what I drink every morning. I have for many years now. And not just because I know the people behind it. It's really good coffee.
Well, the way you
Mm.
talk about it, it just is really romanticized. I'm like, oh, I like it.
Go check it out. For sure.
You'll have to send it to us.
I was torn because there's like two examples totally different that come up first in my mind, and the first one's kind of boring. Just Apple being so consistent. You see an ad, you see a product, you see a web page or a social media post, and you instantly know you're looking at something Apple. I can't even like quite tell you what it is other than like the simplicity, the elegance, but like just it's so consistent. And like then the product functions the same way. And I think that's what I really appreciate most is when there's this through line from the actual product to the way that it's talked about in the essence of the brand, which is why then the other example that always comes to mind is the Sour Patch Kids and the fact that they have all these commercials you've probably seen, like Super Bowl commercials and stuff, where they say first it's sour, then it's sweet. And so the commercials and like the way that the message works out is something bad happens, like these little kids do something bad and then they like do something loving, which is also resonates as a mom. Like I think one of them is like the little Sour Patch Kids like cut somebody's hair while they're sleeping, but then they cuddle them afterwards. And so at first you're like, oh my God, what's happening? And then, oh, they're so cute though. And like, that's the product, is that it's like sour in your mouth. You're kind of like, oh, and then it gets sweet and you just left with the sweet taste in your mouth. So 2 brands kind of executed in completely different ways, but the idea is the same. The product is reflected in the brand message. So that's what resonates for me the most. So from here, we've talked about a lot of different types of brands. What are some things that kind of get in the way? So brand experiences are really hard to keep consistent. And we see that with all of our clients. Or like with Wendy's, sometimes maybe it's intentional, but it seems like it's not, like there's definitely a lot of bad brand experiences that are meant to be cohesive and they're not. So let's talk about like, why is that so hard? Why is it hard to keep a brand experience consistent? Shane, why don't you start?
A challenge I hear from many of our clients, they all know that brand consistency is important. It's very important to them. They don't want people to have brand confusion, because brand confusion, or maybe even worse, like a not memorable brand, that will lose you customers. So they all want to have a consistent brand, a clear brand, but when there are so many people who have hands in the brand, like there are people who are sending out emails, there are people who are designing packaging, there are people who are talking to customers on the front lines on the customer service team, there are salespeople talking to prospects, and it's tough to keep a lot of people on the same page about brand messaging, about how the logo is supposed to be used even. So I think that's the biggest challenge that we hear from clients, is just there's so many people involved. How do I get everyone on the same page?
Yeah, and we talked about this a little in season 1, but just to like level set, a brand that we're talking about is, of course, the logo and how that's used, but also just the overall tone and the way of speaking and the message and the approach that a brand takes overall. And so, as you're saying, Shane, that kind of permeates every level of the business, not just what marketing is doing.
Yeah. And from a content perspective, like it's hard to write in a brand voice. Like it's not something that comes easily to everybody. From a design perspective, like Alyssa, you know way more about that than I do. What do you think?
Oh, well, I feel like the logo and the branding identity itself is something that's you experience from start to finish, no matter what kind of company it is, no matter what product they sell. If it's a company that sells a product or a service, it's something you see repeated throughout every interaction that you have with them, across every single touch point. So it's a foundation for you to build upon of trust, where they see that icon, they see that logo, they know what to expect. And when it's not like established and communicated across the company, that's when things get shaky, because you have to all be on the same page and using it in the same way, because it doesn't matter if it's print collateral or on social media or in video usages, every single instance matters. And a lot of people, I feel like a lot of the time, they don't always consider all of the same facets that we as an agency might be aware of. And trying to communicate that is a struggle that we always try to get across, and making sure that we're using the logo for the right format in the right way at the right size. Just
Because when
things
it's
we always try to
not,
keep.
it's like, even though I'm not a designer, I can tell when something's not being used correctly. Like it just feels sloppy. It feels unprofessional. It feels like something's off here. Just why, like, when I'm creating emails, I'll always ask someone from your team, Melissa, like, hey, can you take a look at this email before it goes out? I just want to make sure from a design perspective it looks right.
Well, and that's an important step too, I feel. Like a system of checks and balances, something that we can help our clients with, might not be something that a smaller company, for example, does on a regular basis. We always go through our different departments to make sure that every piece that leaves our hands is QC'd and exactly as it should be and follows each brand guideline. It's important.
Yeah, I think you said something important there a second ago, which is that everyone just doesn't know what the brand is or what the message is or what the look is or that there are rules even. Like they just think there's a logo. And so it sounds like what you're saying is that in order to achieve good consistency, you first have to start with identifying what makes your brand and then putting that into a framework like a brand guideline or something along those lines and communicating it, making sure everyone has access to it. Vendors, internally, your finance team, like your invoices shouldn't look like something that looks like if you call yourself a quote unquote innovative, Shane's favorite word, company, and then you have invoices that look super old or whatever, that's still a brand interaction that needs to feel cohesive with everything else you'd expect from the brand. So what are other things to help build that framework, that governance for a brand? What are other things that can help with consistency, maintaining consistency?
Well, to pick it up kind of where you left off with the brand guidelines, there are a lot of instances we experience where they don't take the full opportunity to set the brand guidelines up as thoroughly as they could and should be to really be the most use to everybody on the team. A lot of people will assume that it's just this is the size the logo should be. These are the colors you can do it. Maybe reversing out those colors for usages on dark material, things like that. But the missed opportunity that you really need to utilize is you can talk about your voice, what messaging you're trying to convey, what photos that you're allowed to use. For example, we have a client who's very, very strict about the type of photos we can use portraying the material that their product is made from and how it can be portrayed in these images, because it all reflects internally back onto their core messaging, which is sustainability in this particular instance. They are so aware of what their message is that they make sure to cover that in their brand guidelines. And when it is laid out as clearly as possible, it gives everybody even vendors like us, gives us something to reference that allow us to adhere as closely as we can.
That's a good point. This brand guidelines document, it's not only the look of the brand, it's also the messaging of the brand, and it's not only shared internally, it's also shared with any vendors or third parties that you work with who are going to be touching your brand. I think that's a big key to successful brand consistency, because you can have it locked down in-house and then send something to a printer or an agency. And if you don't also tell them how to portray your brand, they're not going to know where to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you're working with like a vendor that's a designer, they need to have the rules laid out for them.
Something I think the both of you do really well is that you make the brand guidelines easy to consume as well. So like both in the way that it's written, Shane, to the point, this is what you should do, this is what you should not, or these are bullet points of the message or whatever. And then Alyssa, when you lay it out in a way that is easy to look at so you can follow along easily. Because I think the other barrier is I've seen brand guidelines that are 20 pages and paragraphs about all the things that you should do and not do. Nobody's going to read that. Like, I hate to burst anyone's bubble, but like, unless they're really, really looking to understand your brand, they're just not going to read it all. And they need to be able to understand what they need to do with the brand message immediately. So I think you guys do a good job of finding that balance, being informative, but still simple.
It has to
Thank
be
you.
usable by anyone. And you might think about having 2 versions of your brand guidelines. Like maybe there is a much longer, more detailed version for the agency, for designers who are working with the brand. And then there's a shorter version for, say, the customer service team that really just needs to have the messaging down.
To that end, too, we have received extremely long brand guidelines in the past. And one thing that I personally am so grateful for is when they put in a table of contents. You know, then I can scroll right to the page that I need, whether I'm looking for colors or typography. No matter what it is I'm looking for, I can jump right there, and that saves a lot of time. It's more efficient.
100%.
So what are other ways that you can make it easy for people to follow brand guidelines? You take the time to set it up, you do this big document or simple document, whichever version. Like, what are the other ways that you can make it easy for teams to stay consistent?
I think with a lot of our clients, we notice that they'll have sort of like an internal brand owner who is the one person who's in charge of giving things a once over before they go out the door, especially before things go to print, to make sure that the brand is being executed in the right way. And as long as there's like one person who knows the brand inside and out, and the buck stops with them, I've seen that work really well. And internally here at the agency, we have a brand owner for every client brand. Like there is somebody who is in charge of making sure that that brand is consistent in everything we do for the client. And that's worked well for us.
Another thing that comes to mind for me is something that we do when we do an identity or rebrand project for a client is we provide them deliverables. And that's something that they can then pass on to those that they need to. It's a package file, a compressed folder that has all of the logos and all the different ways that you might need to use it, CMYK, RGB. We provide them exported files in multiple different formats so that they can really hit the ground running in utilizing the assets in the right way, that they don't have to come back and ask us for, hey, we uploaded this asset to Facebook and it's blurry, or, you know, what have you. We try to give them the tools that they need to best represent themselves.
And that includes the brand model and the message map, everything you need for the brand.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just accessibility.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about our approval processes and the tools that we use, Alyssa?
Yeah, I can do that. So we recently implemented a software. I want to say it was last summer where we kind of really dove into it, where all of our collateral that we do for our clients runs through this software, and it has multiple different touch points throughout that goes through each of our departments that need to review a piece prior to it even going to the client. We have steps for checking it for grammatical errors, checking it against the content origin document, checking against brand guidelines from a creative standpoint. And then from there, it goes to the account manager who communicates with the client and decides whether or not it's ready for the client to look at it. And many times, it goes through multiple rounds of internal review before it goes back to the client. And previously, our processes did work, but I felt like this new software really allowed us to get better about being efficient in terms of comparing versions and double checking edits against new things. Maybe an edit that was given to us 5 rounds ago. We are able to reference quickly and easily when that edit came through, who gave it to us and why, and it allows us to get things back to the client as accurately as possible.
Yeah, it's like a practical way to put legs to that brand owner that you're talking about, Shane, where like you actually have to hit approve on this, saying I have my responsibility was, the brand compliance from a message standpoint. That might be Shane's role, and proofing, general proofing. And then Alyssa has to sign off on it saying, yep, this meets the client standard of their consistency for brand guidelines. And then it comes to my team and we say, did this meet the objective of the project as a whole? And then that helps us keep a consistent product from project to project, for sure.
Mhm.
And then on the client end, something that I see a lot is like DAM solutions, so digital asset managers, and creating these logos and these templates that we set up as an agency a lot of times in the beginning, what you were saying, Alyssa, for a new brand. And then they put it in a central location that anyone can pull. And then they have the commonly used things like letterheads or different PowerPoint presentations and the PowerPoint templates or Keynote templates, whatever softwares they use, or just like even email templates I've seen. Like this is like a good introduction email to our business and how you can say that. I think that's my favorite is like the more creative use of the DAMs when our clients aren't just putting logos in there, which they should, but when they put some of that extra stuff from a messaging standpoint to say, like, if you have to give an elevator pitch of what we do, here it is, you know? So like everyone's reading the same thing. I find that the consistency comes again when you make the less amount of work needed from the person who needs to get that information. You make it as accessible as possible, and that really helps.
Yeah, and then marketing can update that anytime they need to. And there's one central location that anyone on the team can go to get the most recent version of the PowerPoint template or the most recent version of, that piece of collateral.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the DAM would be more internal use, right? You would say?
Internal only most of the time.
Although
Yeah,
they'll
that's
give
what I was
us
thinking.
access as an agency partner.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. We like having
So,
access.
Yes.
As the external side of that, I like when clients or companies in general, if I'm going hunting on a browser for a specific logo and there is a dedicated page for this company to media where they provide you the logos, how they want you to use them. And a lot of times they'll include the brand guidelines with those logo downloads, which we really have to do that a lot. We'll have to go hunting for something that we need to use. And as designers, we try to make sure that we adhere to those companies' guidelines too, even though they're not even our client. It's just good practice.
Yeah, I like it when a company provides a page with all their trademarks. Thanks for making it easy for me.
Yeah.
I see it and I'm like,
Thank
thank you. I see you. I
Yes.
salute you.
Yes.
I think that's part of our value in a lot of ways is that like we know all the different applications that this brand could possibly have and how to communicate that out to, like, you might have 10 different types of external audiences who need your branding information, and giving it to them in a way that is clear and easily accessible through a DAM or through a landing page or whatever.
Yep.
Kind
Then
of
you're
that
more
big
likely
picture.
to see compliance with your brand.
Not that
Mhm.
hard. Brand consistency, right? So problem solved. We have a client that has a nonprofit user group and an event that they host every year. And the challenge is always having a fresh brand for the event that is relevant and exciting. It gathers attention, and is also compliant with the nonprofit brand as a whole, as well as the community's owner, who is a large corporation. So it kind of has to cascade down into checking all these boxes. And then you add to that it changes every year, and there are many, many vendors involved, as you can imagine with an event. There are all of the signage, all of the stage graphics, all of the speaker presentations, all of the on-site handout materials, all done with different printers. There's the hotel key cards. There is videos pre and post event, during the event. There's social media. I could go on, but there's all of these elements that change every year. And so maybe Alyssa, you can talk about how we talked earlier about packaging up the items and kind of trying to anticipate the needs of everyone so that brand compliance is as easy as possible. So maybe you can talk about that brand guidelines that we do every year. That's probably one of the more robust ones that we do, and how we kind of get ahead of all these different cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, it's definitely an ongoing and never-ending process. As you mentioned, it's a yearly event, so it feels like as soon as we wrap up that year's event, within the next 3 or so months, we start work on developing the concept and the theme for the following year. And I think if I remember correctly, we're coming up on 11 years of doing this event and being involved with all of these elements that go into it. So as of now, I feel like we are a well-oiled machine when it comes to hitting the ground running on starting the branding. We have one designer who kind of has taken the reins on building these themes out every single year. And the cool thing after working on it for so many years is that you kind of begin to see the evolution of the theme each year. And there's usually something that tethers you to the previous year's design, but it changes it up. It keeps it fun and exciting. That's nice for us designers. It is not static, it's dynamic, which keeps it fun for us. But like you said, there are a lot of things that you have to keep an eye on. So for us, we do a lot of duplicate elements from year to year. So luckily we have templates that we have built or honed in on and can utilize each year going forward. But the designer that I mentioned, he does a great job of building out the brand guidelines so that we know what colors to use, what certain elements are making that theme that year unique, and how to use them. And he provides an image gallery of the approved images that he's compiled. And usually when it gets to that point of us starting to touch all of these elements and needing to utilize them, the client has already reviewed this brand guideline because we pitch the theme to them prior to all the work starting, which highly necessary, but you don't realize how vital it is to have their buy-in before you start trying to compile all of these elements together.
This is one of the rare instances where we kind of put the cart before the horse, and we include first in the brand guidelines like some examples of end deliverables. Like we show the name badge, and we show the signage, and we show the agendas or headers for email invites, and some of those kinds of things, so that when they see the brand, you see the whole picture about how it all plays out right off the bat. Because then you can tell what elements are most crucial. Like we're telling them these elements are most crucial, but then we kind of show them, and that's the why. Like, why is that element crucial? Because it's the one thing that's consistent on all of these elements, or whatever the reason is.
This particular client, we know that they like to see that end result in order to visualize how everything else is going to come together. So we take those steps to kind of prefabricate everything prior to diving completely in, just to make sure that they're on the same page that we are, and we're using our time efficiently in a way that they are on board with. And like you mentioned, there are so many people involved that we have to get approval from a good chunk of people. So it's important to do that. Then from there, the brand guidelines are put together, and then it kind of disperses down to the rest of the people who might touch on the various elements. like you mentioned, for email, building out the signatures for those emails, the printed collateral that tends to come later, closer to the event, and things that we provide to the sponsors even. We provide email badges that they can add, badges for their website, and all of it speaks to that same theme for that year. So
Yeah, as a
it's
non-designer, I've loved watching this brand evolve because it really is like it feels very cohesive if you look at all the years together. But each year is very unique as well. Like each one has a little something special that the previous years didn't have. It's a really fun one.
Problem solved.
Problem solved.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Alyssa. It's been great having you.
Come back soon.
Oh, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. You guys are a great to spend some time with.
Aw. See you later.
See ya. Bye.
This year marks our 30th year in business. In this season of Sidetracked, we're gathering Trekkies at the bar to reminisce about our favorite moments from the last 3 decades.
So I think my favorite Trek memory, and it's not necessarily work related, but I think it speaks to the camaraderie here and the close-knit nature of the joint. It was maybe my second year here, and once a year I do what I call mustache day, where I shave everything I have but leave just the mustache. Been doing it for a while, and I decided it was time to unveil it here. So I come in and everyone's a little bit taken aback, trying to figure out what's up with this guy. And then on lunch, I went to lunch and I come back. I think Sean orchestrated this. He went out and bought everybody fake mustaches. And they all, at about 3 o'clock, the bell rings and Sean's like, Nick, come back to the bar. Come back to the bar, turn the corner, and everyone is wearing a fake mustache. And it was a really nice moment because it made me feel like, okay, you can be yourself here, mustache and all. And it was nice to see that this is the kind of place where everybody's got your back, no matter how eccentric or off-kilter you may be.
If one was
It was a
to
very
put
sweet
this
moment.
date on the calendar for planning purposes,
Oh, well, you mean...
what is the
You
date?
mean
We can
mustache?
anticipate the next mustache.
See, that's,
Different every year.
that's the best part of Mustache Day. You never see it coming. The date
okay.
changes.
Okay.
Wild card.
Exactly. It's like the McRib. You don't know when it's coming.
Wait.
And it's only here for a certain amount of time.
Is it coming soon?
I can't say. I just said you never know. You can't see it
Okay,
coming.
because you got the full beard. I
I
feel like
do.
you're getting ready.
I can't confirm or deny
Okay.
when the next mustache will be unveiled.
All right. Wow.
That's fantastic.
Cheers to 30 years.
Cheers.
Cheers to 30 years.
Thanks for joining us. If you like this episode of Sidetracked, rate and review it, share it with a friend, subscribe on Apple Podcast or Spotify.
You can learn more about Trek at trek.com. That's TREKK.com.
See you next time.
See ya.